My darlings, never trust a man who brings a dove to a dinner date. Especially if the dove glares at you the whole time like you stole her magician. It started with a card trick and ended with a tablecloth on fire, a very angry pigeon, dove, and me crawling under a stage in heels I had no business wearing at my age. And somewhere in the middle of it all, I might have accidentally said yes to a marriage proposal I thought was part of the act. So sit down, get comfy, and let me tell you about the night I fell, quite literally, for a magician with a charming smile, and one very, very jealous dove. I met him in the park. It was a Tuesday, and I only remember that because I just spilled iced coffee on my skirt and was dramatically regretting every life choice that led me to polyester in the middle of summer. And then poof! A bouquet of flowers appeared out of thin air. Right in front of me. I looked up, expecting a florist or perhaps a heat-induced hallucination, and there he was. A man in suspenders twirling cards between his fingers like some kind of wizard with a day job. Pick a card, he said, with the confidence of someone who has never had his heart broken by polyester. I picked a card. It was the Queen of Hearts, naturally. He winked and said, "That's what I was hoping for." Now, under normal circumstances, I would have walked away. Any man who flirts with a deck of cards usually has a van and too many scarves. But something about him, maybe the twinkle in his eye, or the fact that he handed me the card like it was a promise, made me stay a minute longer. He told me his name was Lorenzo the Astonishing. I told him mine was Margaret the Mildly Skeptical. He laughed and said, "I like a woman with good instincts. Let me put them to the test." Dinner? Now here's where I made my first mistake. I said yes. Because who says no to a magician in the park on a Tuesday? He said he'd pick the place. Said it was unforgettable. He was right. The restaurant was called Secrets and Spaghetti. Half Italian bistro, half magic theater. Menus appeared in smoke. Waiters wore capes. Someone's lasagna levitated. And then he walked in. Wearing a full tuxedo. A velvet cape. And I kid you not, a tall black top hat. And inside the hat was a dove. A real, live, feathered, emotionally unstable dove. She was perched on his shoulder like a tiny, judgmental chaperone. And from the moment he kissed my hand, that bird did not blink. She stared at me like she knew something I didn't, like I was about to become the disappearing act. I should have left right then. But I didn't. Because the breadsticks were excellent. And because, deep down, I was curious. Was he really magical? Or just another man with good hands and too much confidence? Spoiler, it was both. Dinner began with a bit of theater. Before I could even ask for water, Lorenzo took his napkin, gave it a little snap, and it turned into a rose. A real one, or close enough. Slightly damp, smelled faintly of mint. I raised an eyebrow. He smiled like he'd just solved world peace. I laughed, a quiet, polite laugh. That's when the dove, perched on his shoulder, gave a sharp flap of its wings. It flew straight over and landed on the top of my chair, inches from my face. No introduction, no warning, just sat there like it owned the place. Lorenzo chuckled. "Ah, she likes you." I wasn't sure. She stared at me in complete silence, head tilting side to side, as if weighing up her options. Then came the next trick. He reached across the table very casually and plucked what looked like the tip of my nose. Held it up like a trophy. I stared at him. "Are you trying to steal my face?" He laughed. I couldn't help it, I laughed too. And that's when the dove let out the tiniest, most offended coo. She hopped down, walked across the table like a little soldier, and pecked at my bread. Lorenzo tried to gently shoo her. She ignored him. I took a sip of water and pretended this was perfectly normal. He poured me a glass of wine. Just as I lifted it, I noticed something inside. A playing card floating calmly in the red. The Queen of Hearts. I looked at him. "How did you?" He shrugged, like it was nothing. "You looked like someone who deserved to see her card again." I smiled. "He's not wrong, darling." We clinked glasses. The dove gave one more loud flap and flew up to the chandelier, where she could watch us both from above, like some feathery chaperone. And still I stayed. Because as odd as it all was, something about that evening felt like a puzzle worth sitting with. Even if one of the pieces had wings and a bit of an attitude. At some point between the third glass of wine and the dove trying to steal my breadstick, Lorenzo leaned in with that magician sparkle in his eye. "My dear," he said, "how would you like to be part of the grand finale?" Now, I've made a lot of questionable choices in my life. One of them involved tequila and a mechanical bull, but something about this man, in his velvet blazer and dove-stained lapel, made me say, "Why not?" He led me to a little stage area in the corner of the restaurant. Yes, this place had a stage. Of course it did. Next to the dessert cart and a suspiciously large velvet curtain. Lorenzo gestured dramatically and the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the tables. Even the waiter with the enormous mustache paused mid-ladle. I stepped behind the curtain like a good sport. He gave me a wink and whispered, "Trust me." The music swelled, something dramatic, full of violins and mystery. I heard him announce, "Ladies and gentlemen, prepare to witness the impossible." Then a flash of light. A bang. And the unmistakable sound of flapping wings. I stepped forward expecting applause. Only, I wasn't the one stepping out. It was the dove, wearing a tiny white wig. My wig, perched dramatically on the magician's gloved hand. The room erupted in cheers. People stood. Someone whistled. I meanwhile was still behind the curtain, wigless and slightly confused. I peeked out. The dove did a little bow. Lorenzo beamed like a man who just pulled off the greatest trick in human history. "That bird," I muttered, "got more applause than I did at my third wedding." Eventually, he ushered me back out, offered me his arm like a true showman. And what did I do? I curtsied. In front of the entire restaurant. Like I was accepting an award for most tolerant woman on a first date involving a jealous bird and identity theft. The dove flapped up to the chandelier again, now looking smug. I swear she winked at me. And yet, there I was. Smiling. Because sometimes, my darlings, a little chaos is exactly what you need to remember you're still alive. As we returned to our table, me slightly windblown and rethinking all my life choices and Lorenzo practically glowing from his triumphant bird swap trick, he leaned across the table with the same grin magicians use right before sawing someone in half. "I forgot to mention something," he said, as twinkling like he was about to pull another rabbit out of somewhere inappropriate. "The dove's name is Margaret." I blinked. "Margaret." I repeated in the kind of tone a woman reserves for discovering someone else at the party is wearing her dress, or in this case, her name. He nodded. "She's been my stage partner for years. She's a bit territorial." I turned to the bird, who, I kid you not, was sitting on my chair like a tiny, feathered queen, calmly pecking at my breadstick and staring at me like I was the plus one. "Well," I said, adjusting my blouse in dignity, "I guess now there are two fabulous Margarets in the room." At that moment, the dove puffed up her feathers proudly and gave what I can only describe as a smug little coo. Then, and I swear on my third husband's hairpiece, she flew up and landed on my shoulder like we were suddenly best friends. Before I could swat her away, she leaned in and tried to kiss me on the cheek. I screamed. Not a polite little, "Oh." No, I let out a full operatic "ah-h-h-h" that made the maitre d' drop a tray of creme brulee. Lorenzo lunged across the table. "Maggie, no. We talked about this." Guests stared. A waiter gasped. And then, then it got worse. Apparently, in all the flapping and fumbling, someone knocked over a candle. The flame rolled across the tablecloth like it had plans. Within seconds, one corner of the table was smoking like it was auditioning for a barbecue. Now listen, it wasn't a big fire. No one was injured. Unless you count my ego and the wine list. I did what any self-respecting woman does in a restaurant emergency. I grabbed the bread basket and slammed it down on the flames. A charred bread roll rolled across the floor. The dove squawked dramatically and flung herself back into her cage like a Victorian widow. And me? I crawled out from under the table, hair slightly singed, blouse smelling of garlic and danger, holding a baguette like a sword. And I said the only thing I could think of. "Check, please." Lorenzo, bless his flamboyant little heart, was already folding a napkin into a swan with one hand and writing his number on its beak with the other. "I'd love to see you again," he said. "Maybe something simpler next time. Like axe throwing." I just smiled, stood up and said, "I think one Margaret is enough for both of us." And I walked out into the night, damp, disoriented, and laughing like a woman who's just survived both a jealous bird and a spontaneous combustion. And here's what I've learned, sweethearts. Wear lipstick that can survive both wine and unexpected beak contact. And never, never trust a man who says he can make you disappear. Unless you're really into mystery. Now tell me, my darlings. Have you ever dated a magician? A man with a bird named after his ex? A fire hazard in formal wear? Tell me your story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe before I poof. Vanish again. Seriously though. Hit that button. Grandma's got stories and she's not getting any younger.